The snow fell softly, blanketing the quiet suburban road in a layer of white. It was one of those nights where the world seemed to hold its breath, the kind of stillness that only winter can bring. The street lights cast a faint glow, illuminating the flakes as they drifted down, and the occasional car passed by, tires crunching against the icy pavement. It was late, and most people were indoors, curled up by the fire or tucked into bed, unaware of what was about to unfold. A small sedan sped down the road, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, the driver seemed in a hurry, the wheels slipping slightly on the snow. The car was unremarkable, the kind you might see every day without giving it a second thought. But what happened next was anything but ordinary. As the car approached a bend in the road, the rear window rolled down. A hand appeared, clutching something small and fragile. For a moment, the world seemed to pause, as if even the snowflakes hesitated in their descent. Then, with a swift motion, the hand tossed its bundle out into the cold night air. The bundle landed in a snowbank with a soft thud, barely audible over the hum of the car's engine. The vehicle sped away, its taillights disappearing into the distance, leaving behind only silence and the faint imprint of tire tracks in the snow. The bundle stirred. It was a mother cat, her fur matted and damp from the snow. She let out a weak meow, her body trembling from the cold and the shock of being thrown from the moving car. But she wasn't alone. Nestled against her were three tiny kittens, their eyes still closed, their bodies barely bigger than the palm of a hand. They were too young to understand what had happened, too fragile to survive long in the freezing temperatures. The mother cat struggled to her feet, her instincts kicking in despite her exhaustion. She knew she had to protect her babies to find shelter and warmth before it was too late. She nudged the kittens gently, urging them to stay close, and began to move, her paws sinking into the snow with each step. The road was deserted, the houses set back from the street, their windows dark and unyielding. The cat's breath came in shallow puffs, visible in the cold air, as she searched for a place to hide. She was weak, her body battered from the ordeal, but she pressed on, driven by a force stronger than fear or pain. Finally, she spotted it, a small gap beneath a wooden fence, just wide enough for her to squeeze through. Beyond it was a backyard, quiet and undisturbed, with a shed in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She turned back to her kittens, her meows soft and urgent, and one by one she carried them to the safety of the shed. Inside, the air was still cold, but it was a reprieve from the biting wind outside. The mother cat curled herself around her babies, licking them gently to warm them up. Her body was their only source of heat, her presence their only comfort. She knew the night would be long, and the days ahead uncertain, but for now they were safe. As the snow continued to fall outside, the mother cat closed her eyes, her breathing slow and steady. She had done all she could, and for the moment, that was enough. The world outside was harsh and unforgiving, but within the walls of the shed, there was a fragile sense of peace. The night stretched on, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of the shed's wooden walls. The mother cat's instincts told her to stay alert, to be ready for whatever might come next. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of rest, her body curled protectively around her kittens. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, the sound muffled by the snow. The mother cat's ears twitched, but she didn't move. Her focus was on her babies, on keeping them warm and safe. The world outside could wait. And so the night passed, the snow falling steadily, covering the tracks left behind by the car and the cat. By morning, the road would look pristine, as if nothing had happened. But inside the shed, a small miracle was unfolding. A mother's love, fierce and unyielding, against all odds. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, pale and weak, barely penetrating the thick layer of clouds that hung low in the sky. The snow had stopped falling, but the world outside the shed remained frozen and still. Inside, the mother cat stirred, her body stiff from the cold and the cramped space. She lifted her head, her ears twitching as she listened for any signs of danger. The shed was quiet, save for the soft breathing of her kittens nestled against her. The kittens were still too young to open their eyes, their tiny bodies relying entirely on their mother for warmth and nourishment. She licked them gently, her rough tongue stimulating their circulation and cleaning their fur. Despite her own exhaustion, she knew she had to keep them alive. Her instincts told her that the shed was only a temporary refuge. She needed to find food, and soon. With great care, she disentangled herself from the kittens, leaving them huddled together in a small warm pile. She moved to the edge of the shed, her paws silent on the wooden floor, and peered out through the gap beneath the fence. The backyard was empty, the snow undisturbed. Beyond the fence, the road was quiet, the early morning hour keeping most people indoors. The mother cat hesitated for a moment, her instincts warring with her fear. Leaving her kittens, even for a short time, was a risk, but she had no choice. She slipped through the gap beneath the fence, her body low to the ground as she scanned the area for any signs of movement. The cold air bit at her fur, but she pressed on, her senses sharp and alert. She moved quickly, her paws leaving faint prints in the snow as she made her way toward the nearest house. The scent of food was faint, but it was there, a trace of something edible that had been discarded in a trash bin. She approached cautiously, her ears swiveling as she listened for any sounds. The house was silent, its occupants likely still asleep. The trash bin was tall, its lid secured, but the mother cat was determined. She leaped onto the lid, her claws scrabbling for purchase on the slippery surface. After a few attempts, she managed to push the lid aside, just enough to squeeze inside. The smell of food was stronger here, and she quickly found what she was looking for: a half-eaten sandwich, its edges stale but still edible. She grabbed it in her mouth and climbed out of the bin, her movements swift and efficient. As she made her way back to the shed, she paused at the sound of a door opening. Her body froze, her instincts screaming at her to hide. A man stepped out of the house, his breath visible in the cold air as he stretched and yawned. He didn't notice the cat, his attention focused on the snow-covered yard. After a moment, he went back inside, the door closing softly behind him. The mother cat waited until she was sure the coast was clear before continuing on her way. She slipped back into the shed, her heart pounding from the close call. The kittens were still where she had left them, their tiny bodies curled together for warmth. She dropped the sandwich beside them and began to tear off small pieces, feeding them as best she could. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going for now. As the kittens ate, the mother cat kept watch, her ears pricked for any sounds of danger. She knew she couldn't stay in the shed forever. Sooner or later, someone would find them, and she didn't know if they would be friendly or not. She had to find a safer place, a place where her kittens could grow and thrive. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of rest. The shed was cold, but it was shelter. The kittens were weak, but they were alive. And as long as they were alive, there was hope. The morning light grew stronger, though the sky remained overcast, casting a dull gray hue over the snow-covered landscape. The mother cat stayed close to her kittens, her body curled around them as they slept. She had managed to feed them a little, but her own hunger gnawed at her. She knew she would have to venture out again soon, but the thought of leaving her babies unprotected filled her with dread. As she lay there, her ears twitched at the sound of footsteps crunching through the snow. Her body tensed, her instincts screaming at her to stay hidden. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the soft jingle of keys. Someone was approaching the shed. The mother cat's heart raced as she pressed herself closer to the ground, her eyes fixed on the gap beneath the fence. She could see a pair of boots now, their treads leaving deep impressions in the snow. The person paused, and for a moment there was silence. Then the sound of the shed's door creaking open filled the air. The mother cat's breath caught in her throat as a figure stepped inside. It was a woman, her face framed by a thick scarf and a woolen hat pulled low over her ears. She carried a shovel in one hand, her breath visible in the cold air as she glanced around the shed. Her eyes fell on the mother cat and her kittens, and she froze, her expression softening. "Oh my goodness," the woman whispered, her voice gentle. She knelt down slowly, careful not to startle the cat. "What are you doing out here in the cold?" The mother cat watched her warily, her body tense and ready to defend her babies if necessary. But there was something in the woman's tone, something kind and reassuring, that made her hesitate. The woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small bag of cat food, the kind you might keep on hand for a pet. She shook a few pieces into her hand and held it out, her movements slow and deliberate. "It's okay," the woman said softly. I'm not going to hurt you. The mother cat's nose twitched as the scent of the food reached her. Her hunger outweighed her fear, and she crept forward cautiously, her eyes never leaving the woman's face. She sniffed at the food, then began to eat, her movements quick and efficient. The woman smiled, her eyes warm with compassion. You must be starving, she murmured. She glanced at the kittens, her expression growing more serious. And these little ones, they're so young. You've been through a lot, haven't you? The mother cat finished the food and looked up at the woman, her gaze wary but no longer hostile. The woman reached out slowly, giving the cat time to back away if she wanted to. When the mother cat didn't move, the woman gently stroked her head, her touch light and soothing. You're a good mama, the woman said softly, but you can't stay out here. It's too cold and you need proper care. She glanced around the shed, her mind racing. I'll be right back, okay? I'm going to get something to help you. The woman stood up and left the shed, closing the door gently behind her. The mother cat watched her go, her instincts still on high alert. She returned to her kittens, curling herself around them once more. The woman's kindness had given her a glimmer of hope, but she didn't know if she could trust her completely. A few minutes later, the woman returned, carrying a small cardboard box lined with a soft blanket. She set it down on the floor of the shed and knelt beside it, her movements slow and deliberate. I know you're scared, she said, her voice calm and reassuring. But I want to help you and your babies. This box will keep you warm, and I'll take you somewhere safe. You don't have to do this alone anymore. The mother cat hesitated, her instincts warring with her desire for safety. The woman waited patiently, her hand extended, offering the cat a choice. Finally, the mother cat stood up and nudged her kittens gently, urging them toward the box. One by one, she carried them over, her movements careful and precise. The woman watched in silence, her heart swelling with admiration for the cat's determination and love. When all the kittens were settled in the box, the mother cat climbed in after them, her body curling protectively around her babies. The woman smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You're going to be okay, she said softly. I promise. She picked up the box carefully, holding it close to her chest as she made her way back to the house. The mother cat peered out from the box, her eyes wide with uncertainty, but she didn't struggle. There was something about the woman's presence, something calm and reassuring, that made her feel safe. Inside the house, the woman set the box down in a quiet corner of the living room, away from drafts and noise. She fetched a bowl of water and some more food, placing them within easy reach of the mother cat. Then she sat down nearby, her presence a silent promise that she wouldn't let anything happen to them. The mother cat drank deeply from the bowl, her thirst finally quenched. She ate a little more, her strength slowly returning. The kittens, sensing their mother's calm, settled down to sleep, their tiny bodies warm and content. The woman watched them for a moment, her heart full. She knew there was still a long road ahead. The kittens would need care and attention, and the mother cat would need time to recover from her ordeal. But for now they were safe, and that was enough. The warmth of the house was a stark contrast to the cold shed where the mother cat and her kittens had spent the night. The woman, whose name was Emily, had made a cozy corner for them in her living room, complete with soft blankets, food, and water. She sat nearby, watching as the mother cat tended to her babies, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and determination. Emily had always loved animals, but she had never taken in a stray before. Seeing the mother cat's resilience and the vulnerability of the kittens had touched something deep within her. She knew she couldn't just let them go back out into the cold. They needed her, and she was determined to give them the care they deserved. Over the next few days, Emily settled into a routine. She made sure the mother cat had plenty of food and water, and she kept a close eye on the kittens, checking to make sure they were growing stronger. She named the mother cat Bella, a name that seemed to suit her gentle yet fierce nature. The kittens, still too young to be named, were simply referred to as the babies for now. Bella, though still wary, began to relax in Emily's presence. She no longer hissed or arched her back when Emily approached, and she even allowed her to stroke her head occasionally. The kittens, oblivious to the world outside their cozy nest, thrived under their mother's care. Their tiny bodies grew stronger, their fur becoming softer and fuller. One afternoon, as Emily sat on the floor near the box, watching the kittens play, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. One of the kittens, the smallest of the three, was struggling to keep up with its siblings. While the other two tumbled and pounced, this one seemed lethargic, its movements slow and uncoordinated. Emily's stomach churned with worry. She had read enough about kittens to know that the first few weeks of their lives were critical. Any sign of weakness could be a cause for concern. She reached out gently, picking up the tiny kitten and cradling it in her hands. It felt lighter than the others, its breathing shallow and uneven. "Oh, little one," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "What's wrong with you?" She knew she couldn't handle this on her own. She needed help. Carefully, she placed the kitten back in the box and reached for her phone. A quick search led her to a local veterinarian who specialized in small animals. She called the clinic, her hands shaking as she explained the situation. The receptionist was kind and understanding, urging Emily to bring the kitten in as soon as possible. Emily hung up the phone and took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She knew she had to act quickly. She carefully transferred the kittens into a larger carrier, making sure they were warm and secure. Bella watched her with wide eyes, her body tense with anxiety. Emily spoke to her softly, trying to reassure her. "It's okay, Bella," she said. "I'm going to take care of your babies." I promise. Bella seemed to understand, or at least trust her enough to let her take the kittens. Emily grabbed her coat and keys, her heart pounding as she carried the carrier to her car. The drive to the vet felt like an eternity, every red light and slow-moving vehicle adding to her anxiety. When she finally arrived at the clinic, the staff was waiting for her. They took the kittens into an exam room, their movements quick and efficient. Emily sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her mind racing with worry. After what felt like hours, the vet emerged, her expression calm but serious. She explained that the smallest kitten was suffering from a condition called fading kitten syndrome, a term that made Emily's stomach twist. The vet assured her that they were doing everything they could, but the kitten's chances were slim. Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she nodded, determined to stay strong. She asked if she could see the kitten, and the vet led her to a small incubator where the tiny creature lay, hooked up to a network of tubes and monitors. "We're giving her fluids and keeping her warm," the vet explained. "But she's a fighter. She's holding on." Emily reached into the incubator, her fingers brushing against the kitten's soft fur. "You can do this," she whispered. "You're stronger than you know." She stayed at the clinic for hours, refusing to leave until she knew the kitten was stable. The other two kittens, healthy and strong, were returned to her, their tiny meows filling the carrier. Bella would be waiting for them at home, and Emily knew she couldn't keep her waiting too long. Finally, the vet gave her the news she had been hoping for. The kitten's condition had stabilized, and while she wasn't out of the woods yet, she had a fighting chance. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her shoulders sagging with the weight of the day's emotions. She drove home with the kittens, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. She knew the road to recovery would be long and uncertain, but she was determined to see it through. Bella and her babies had become a part of her life, and she wasn't going to let them go without a fight. When she arrived home, Bella was waiting by the door, her eyes wide with concern. Emily set the carrier down and opened it, letting the kittens crawl out. Bella immediately began to inspect them, her nose twitching as she sniffed each one. When she reached the smallest kitten, she paused, her gaze lingering for a moment before she began to lick it gently, as if she knew it needed extra care. Emily watched them, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but for now they were together, and that was enough. The days that followed were a blur of worry, hope, and tireless care. Emily's life revolved around the kittens and Bella, her days marked by feedings, vet visits, and moments of quiet observation. The smallest kitten, whom Emily had named Hope, was the center of her attention. Hope's condition remained fragile, but she was a fighter, her tiny body clinging to life with a tenacity that amazed everyone. Emily had set up a small nursery in her spare room, complete with a heating pad, soft blankets, and a humidifier to keep the air moist. She spent hours there, watching over Hope and her siblings, making sure they were warm and fed. Bella was a constant presence, her maternal instincts stronger than ever. She rarely left the kitten's side, her body curled around them as if to shield them from the world. Despite the challenges, there were moments of joy. The two healthier kittens, whom Emily had named Max and Luna, were growing quickly, their playful antics bringing a smile to her face. They tumbled over each other, their tiny paws batting at imaginary foes, their meows filling the room with life. Bella watched them with a mixture of pride and exhaustion, her eyes often closing as she rested. But Hope's progress was slow. She needed to be fed every 2 hours, a task that required patience and precision. Emily had learned how to bottle feed her, using a special formula recommended by the vet. Hope's tiny mouth would latch on to the nipple, her weak suckling a testament to her determination. Emily would sit for what felt like hours, her fingers gently supporting Hope's head, her heart aching with every struggle the kitten endured. One evening, as Emily sat in the nursery, feeding Hope, she felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The days had been long, the nights even longer, and the weight of responsibility was beginning to take its toll. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes closing for just a moment, when she felt a soft nudge against her leg. She opened her eyes to find Bella standing beside her, her green eyes filled with something that looked like gratitude. The cat rubbed against Emily's leg, her purr soft but steady, before jumping onto the chair and settling beside her. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to Emily. In that moment, she felt a connection with Bella, a silent understanding that they were in this together. As the days turned into weeks, Hope began to show signs of improvement. Her breathing became less labored, her movements more coordinated. She still lagged behind her siblings, but she was growing stronger, her tiny body filling out with each passing day. Emily's heart swelled with pride every time she saw Hope attempt to play with Max and Luna, her determination unwavering. The vet visits became less frequent, the news more encouraging. Hope's progress was slow but steady, and the vet assured Emily that with continued care, the kitten had a good chance of making a full recovery. Emily clung to those words, letting them fuel her determination. One afternoon, as Emily sat in the nursery, watching the kittens play, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The room was filled with the sounds of life, tiny meows, the rustle of blankets, the soft purr of Bella as she watched over her babies. Emily leaned back in her chair, her eyes closing as she allowed herself a moment of rest. She thought about the journey they had been on, the challenges they had faced, and the bond that had formed between them. Bella and her kittens had become a part of her life in a way she had never expected. They had brought her a sense of purpose, a reminder of the resilience of life and the power of love. As she sat there, she realized that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments of worry and doubt, but for now they were together, and that was enough. The weeks turned into months, and the once tiny kittens began to grow into lively, curious cats. Max and Luna were bundles of energy, their playful antics filling Emily's home with laughter and joy. Hope, though still smaller than her siblings, had made remarkable progress. Her once fragile body was now strong and healthy, her spirit unyielding. Bella, the devoted mother, watched over them with a quiet pride, her presence a constant source of comfort and stability. Emily's home had transformed into a haven for the little family. The nursery had been replaced with a larger, more open space where the kittens could explore and play. Cat trees, toys, and scratching posts were scattered throughout the room, each one bearing the marks of tiny claws and teeth. Emily had even installed a window perch, allowing the kittens to watch the world outside, their eyes wide with wonder as they observed birds and squirrels darting through the trees. Despite the joy they brought, caring for 4 cats was no small task. Emily's days were filled with feeding schedules, litter box cleanings, and endless playtime. But she didn't mind. The love and companionship she received in return made it all worthwhile. Bella, in particular, had become her shadow, following her from room to room and curling up beside her at night. The bond between them had deepened, a silent understanding that they were family. One evening, as Emily sat on the couch with Bella nestled beside her, she found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed. She had always been content living alone, but the arrival of Bella and her kittens had brought a new sense of purpose and fulfillment. She had learned so much from them, about resilience, love, and the importance of second chances. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of tiny paws patting across the floor. She looked up to see Hope approaching, her small body moving with a confidence that had been absent in her early days. The kitten leaped onto the couch, her eyes fixed on Emily with a look of pure adoration. Emily smiled, reaching out to stroke Hope's soft fur. "You've come so far, little one," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Hope responded with a soft purr, her body curling into Emily's lap. Bella watched from her spot on the couch, her eyes half closed in contentment. Max and Luna, never ones to be left out, soon joined the pile, their playful natures momentarily subdued as they settled in for a cozy evening. As Emily sat there, surrounded by her feline family, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The challenges they had faced together had only strengthened their bond, and she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it as a family. But as much as she loved them, Emily knew that she couldn't keep all four cats forever. Her home, while comfortable, was only so big, and she wanted to ensure that each of them had the best possible life. She had already begun to think about finding forever homes for Max, Luna, and Hope, though the thought of saying goodbye filled her with a bittersweet ache. One afternoon, she decided to broach the subject with a friend who had experience with animal rescue. They sat at Emily's kitchen table, cups of tea steaming between them, as Emily explained her dilemma. "I love them so much," she said, her voice tinged with emotion, "but I want them to have the best lives possible. I just don't know if I can give that to all of them." Her friend nodded, her expression understanding. "It's never easy to let go," she said, "but sometimes the most loving thing we can do is give them the chance to thrive in a home where they can get all the attention they need." Emily sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "I know you're right. It's just hard to imagine saying goodbye." Her friend reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on Emily's. "You've already done so much for them. You saved their lives, Emily. That's something to be proud of." The words brought a small measure of comfort, but Emily knew that the decision wouldn't be easy. She spent the next few days observing the kittens, trying to imagine them in new homes. Max, with his bold personality, would thrive in a household with children who could match his energy. Luna, with her gentle nature, would be perfect for someone looking for a calm and affectionate companion. And Hope, despite her rough start, had a spirit that would bring joy to anyone lucky enough to have her. Bella, however, was different. Emily couldn't imagine parting with her. The bond they had formed was too strong, too special. Bella had become more than just a pet. She was family. As the days passed, Emily began to make plans. She reached out to local animal shelters and rescue organizations, determined to find the perfect homes for Max, Luna, and Hope. She knew it would take time, but she was committed to ensuring that each kitten found a loving family. In the meantime, she cherished every moment with them, knowing that their time together was precious. She took photos, played with them, and showered them with love, determined to give them the best possible start to their lives. And through it all, Bella remained by her side, a constant reminder of the love and resilience that had brought them together. The day finally arrived when Emily knew it was time to let go. She had spent weeks carefully screening potential adopters, determined to find the perfect homes for Max, Luna, and Hope. Each kitten had a unique personality, and she wanted to ensure they would be placed in environments where they could thrive. It wasn't an easy decision, but she knew it was the right one. The first to leave was Max. A young family with two children had fallen in love with his playful and adventurous nature. Emily had met with them several times, observing how they interacted with Max and ensuring they understood the responsibility of caring for a kitten. On the day of the adoption, she packed a bag with his favorite toys, a blanket that smelled like home, and a note detailing his routines and preferences. As she handed Max over to his new family, her heart ached, but she smiled through her tears. The children's faces lit up with joy as they held him, and Emily knew he would be loved and cherished. She watched them drive away, her hand resting on Bella's head as the cat sat beside her, her green eyes following the car until it disappeared from view. "He's going to be okay," Emily whispered, more to herself than to Bella. "They're all going to be okay." Next was Luna. A retired woman named Margaret had been searching for a gentle companion to keep her company. Emily had instantly liked her. She was kind, patient, and clearly adored Luna from the moment they met. On the day of the adoption, Margaret arrived with a carrier and a warm smile. Emily spent a few moments explaining Luna's quirks and habits, her voice trembling as she said her goodbyes. "Take good care of her," Emily said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I will," Margaret promised, her voice soft and sincere. "She's going to be spoiled rotten. I can tell you that." Emily laughed, the sound mingling with her tears as she watched Margaret carry Luna to her car. Bella, as always, was by her side, her presence a quiet comfort. Finally, it was Hope's turn. A young couple, Sarah and James, had been drawn to Hope's story of resilience. They had recently lost their elderly cat and were ready to open their hearts to a new furry friend. Emily had been hesitant at first. Hope's rough start in life made her more vulnerable, and Emily wanted to be sure she would be in the best possible hands. But after several visits, she felt confident that Sarah and James were the right choice. On the day of the adoption, Emily packed a special bag for Hope, including the tiny blanket she had slept on as a kitten and a toy that had been her favorite. She held Hope close one last time, her tears falling onto the kitten's soft fur. "You're so brave," Emily whispered. "You've come so far, little one. I'm so proud of you." Hope purred softly, her tiny body warm against Emily's chest. Reluctantly, Emily handed her over to Sarah, who cradled the kitten with the utmost care. "We'll send you updates," Sarah promised, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for giving her this chance." Emily nodded, unable to speak as she watched them leave. Bella pressed against her leg, her purr a steady reminder that she was still there. Emily knelt down, wrapping her arms around the cat and burying her face in her fur. "It's just you and me now," she said, her voice muffled. "But we'll be okay. We'll always have each other." In the weeks that followed, Emily adjusted to the quietness of her home. The absence of the kittens was palpable, but she took comfort in the updates she received from their new families. Max was thriving in his lively household, his playful antics bringing laughter to the children. Luna had become Margaret's constant companion, her gentle presence a source of comfort. And Hope, despite her rough start, was blossoming under Sarah and James's care, her spirit as strong as ever. Emily kept photos of the kittens on her fridge, a reminder of the journey they had shared. Bella, now the sole feline in the house, seemed to relish the extra attention. She followed Emily everywhere, her purr a constant soundtrack to their days. One evening, as Emily sat on the couch with Bella curled up beside her, she reflected on everything that had happened. The snowy night when Bella and her kittens had been thrown from the car felt like a lifetime ago. So much had changed since then, not just for the cats, but for Emily as well. She had discovered a strength and resilience she hadn't known she possessed, and she had learned the true meaning of love and sacrifice. As she stroked Bella's soft fur, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had also been filled with moments of joy and connection. She had made a difference in the lives of 4 cats, and in doing so, they had changed her life too. "We did it, Bella," she said softly. "We gave them a chance, and we'll always have each other." Bella purred in response, her eyes closing as she leaned into Emily's touch. Outside, the snow began to fall, blanketing the world in a layer of white. But inside, the warmth of love and companionship filled the room, a reminder that even in the coldest of nights, there is always hope. Sometimes the greatest acts of love require sacrifice and courage. By opening our hearts and homes to those in need, we not only change their lives, but also discover the strength and compassion within ourselves. Every life is worth fighting for, and every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create a ripple effect of hope and love. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more tales of resilience, love, and second chances. Together we can make a difference, one story at a time.